Okay, here we are live. No one's waiting for me. Let's just put this as there we go. That's it. One person. One. Very good. Oh, I can close this as well. Right. Okay, well, apparently some 40 of you or so wanted to have my next live stream be about current affairs and at the same time surviving the zombie apocalypse. So the only way to talk reasonably about that is to discuss it in terms of the game. Because then, nobody's going to get the wrong idea that I might be serious about those sorts of things. There it is. That's what it's called, surviving the current zombie apocalypse. Role-playing game. That's what you search for at the bottom on Amazon, and you should find it. So everything that I'm going to be talking about is going to be in the context of you playing this role-playing game. You're role-playing your real life. Current affairs, there's quite a few people that are wondering whether we're going to enter a hot World War III. We have, of course, been in World War III for 2 years currently, but most people are unaware of that. Very interesting weekend, actually, I had. Met this guy who knows a lot of the same stuff I do, and he was going on about how Albert Pike spoke to, Giuseppe Mazzini, who was one of the liberators of Italy and a complete Freemason, about the history of the future of what would happen in the world. And it's really interesting because if you read the letters of Albert Pike to Mazzini, they pretty much spell it out. They were going to have 2 world wars. This was written in the 1800s, late 1800s. 2 world wars, and then the 3rd World War, which is going to be a little bit different from the other 2, which it is, but have a massive body count, which it will. And so this interesting character was also, hello Woolly Ram, was also talking about sovereign citizenship and so on. Well, it's actually not citizenship, it's sovereign individualism, which is something I've been looking into just for a number of reasons, and trusts and so on, which is interesting stuff. But I also met a legend of a man. He's a guy, he's just, he lives quite far away, so I don't know when I'll next see him, but I really hope I get to spend some time with the guy. This guy, he's on YouTube, if you know where to look. Basically, the banks fucking ripped him off. There was supposed to be this deal, and then the bank changed the deal, which is something they do in Italy a lot. I mean, banks in Italy are just fraudulent, thieving fucks, much more than banks in any other country I've ever lived in. And he was mentioning, for example, that there is whatever the, if you take a legal guy to look through your accounts, they invariably rob you. Whenever there's especially a commercial account, there's 100% of them are stealing money from you. And it's just a quantity of how much, per year. Is it like $100? Is it like 100 grand? Depending on your account, they'll steal whatever they think they can get away with. And in his case, they robbed about 24 grand's worth of money from his account. With these trumped up fake bullshit charges and whatever. So what he did is he took some kind of a tractor with the manure spreading function, and he went right up to the bank and like fucking plastered it. I was so happy to shake that man's hand. It was just, I didn't get a chance to ask him about the consequences of that legally or whatever, but he was perfectly calm. He was happy. He was like funny. Really good guy. So I had a slightly interesting weekend, but the point is, also, I met several people this weekend, and one of them was discussing with me how they went to visit um, this guy. Oh, no, Woolly Ram, they don't do the usual trick of shaving a few pennies from each transaction. These are like large scale frauds. Like on 80 grand, they'll steal 20 grand. That's just, and they'll try and pass it off as, oh no, it's all fine. And you write to them and they'll say, oh no, it's all fine. Then you have to get a lawyer. It, it's basically just theft. I don't know how else to describe it. That's what it is. But anyway, I met this person that was saying, yeah, they went to visit this guy who is pretty well known. He's a high up guy, or was in the Italian military. And they were telling me, yeah, this guy thinks a bit like you. He's got like 400 kilos of pasta in his cellar, and has like got water purification and water tanks and stuff. And I was like, yeah, well, as I've been saying for a while, from the beginning of this year, I think, I don't know what the timeline is. Maybe we're lucky we got 10 years. But I keep thinking 5 years is like, if we have 5 years, we're doing well. Because I think 2-3 years, it's going to start getting pretty bad. And I hope I'm wrong. I truly hope I'm wrong. But all the indications are telling me that food shortages, gas bills, electricity bills, I mean, that stuff that's happening in Russia now and Ukraine, whatever, the actual price of petroleum has gone down. It was $148 a barrel, and we were paying less. Then now it's $127 a barrel. Last time I checked a few days ago, and the price has skyrocketed. I mean, like, it used to take me about 70-80 euro to fill up a tank. Now it's 100 euro won't do it. It's jumped up by like 30, 40, 50% in like days, and for no reason. There was a funny meme here in Italy because it says they used to tell you don't drink and drive. Now it's drink and don't drive, because they're showing bottles of wine, pretty decent Italian wine, that are less than $2. You can get a full bottle of wine here for under $2, and the petrol is over $2. So it's like petrol is literally more expensive than booze. So it's just like, no, I wouldn't trust that. Woolly Ram says, would food grown from banker compost be safe for human consumption? I wouldn't trust it. I mean, David the Good says compost everything, but that guy's an extreme gardener. I wouldn't go that route at all. No. So anyway, this military guy has got exactly the same idea I've got, which is, stock up as much as you can, but ultimately you've got to be fully self-sufficient. Power, heating, water, all that stuff, food, and then the other thing is community. And apparently this guy's setting himself up in a way where, his neighbors are all within like walkie-talkie range, like radio range. And I was also discussing strategic things and so on, in the vein of, well, as I said, we're just talking about, the RPG game. So there you go. If suddenly I mention, the assassination of politicians, that's in reference to the game, So the thing is, if you're going to survive a zombie apocalypse, it's not good enough to just have, stocked up on food and water, and you've got to be you've got to be like Russia. You've got to be completely independent for energy, for water, and heating if you need it in the location where you are. Fuel, in terms of vehicles, but also like generators or however you're going to get your power. And again, if you're going to have generators to supply electricity, you're going to need fuel, and that's not always going to be sustainable. So you should try and have some kind of at least emergency sustainable level of electricity. I'm trying to get to a point where if I had to go completely off grid, I could still heat all the house, ideally heat the sanitary water, water for washing and cooking and whatever. There are some filter mechanism. I just found out that we have a rain storage well, so that needs to be. It's been sealed off, so I need to open that up and clean it out and check how it works and see what can be done with that. But you need to be completely independent, and I would say in the order of importance would be potable water, which might require filtering, especially if you're going to have this crud that they're trying to inject into people, like the mutagenic serum. You want to have some kind of way to filter the water in your role-playing game. And I don't know what filters those would be, but anyway, if you've got a good clean source of water, that's most important. The second thing that I would say is most important is to be completely energy self-sufficient, which means whatever electricity you need, that you're able to get that without having to rely on the national grid. If you can do those two things, with the electricity, I would include heating, but to heat with electricity is very, very difficult, expensive, and you have to have a really powerful system. So probably I would say either gas, but again, gas is relying on other people, or wood, stove, some kind of something like that, some renewable source of heating if you need it. In Italy we've got very, very efficient little wood stoves and pellets and so on. That again, I wouldn't go for pellet, I would go for wood, because depending on where you are, of course, but wood. There's if you're in an area that's got plenty of wood, that'll last you years or whatever. And a tiny little stove can heat a small house very well. One of my uncles has got like 3 little chalets up in the mountains. They're about 700-800 meters above sea level. They definitely get snow up there. And I was there in winter with a girl that I was seeing at the time. And with one little chunk of wood about that big, I think it lasted about, we put one in like in the evening, and then in the morning you'd put another one in, and it was like t-shirt weather. It was like she was just in her underwear sort of thing, and you weren't cold. And it had a big glass window looking out onto the mountainscape, and it was it was snowing outside and stuff, but it was perfectly comfortable. So a little efficient wood stove for heating if you're in a cold area, it's good. You've got to have water, you've got to have power. But let's say you have all of that, and let's say you've also stocked up on food, okay? Because you need an emergency food thing. You don't always have the opportunity to go and plant potatoes or whatever. Trees of fruits and berries and what have you. And you even know how to do conserves and stuff, so it lasts. And let's say you're also in an area where you can hunt. So you've got some meat, or maybe you've got chickens, you've got farm animals. So let's say you're self-sufficient in terms of food. I would still have 6 months at least of food supply in emergency or whatever. But even if you have all of that, and let's say you're armed to the teeth, you live in some cool place like America, you got I don't consider America a cool place, but whatever. Let's say you're in a good place where you can have as much guns and ammo as you want, and you've got it. Great. Still not enough, because once the zombie apocalypse hits, apart from the military, the armed forces, because if you have all that stuff, you could potentially be a target. But let's say you're a clever guy, you've picked like some out of the way area where there's no real natural resources, people don't need to go there. So the military is unlikely to like come and look at you really, unless you piss somebody off or you do something else. But then you'll have the roving band of zombies, or the roving band of non-zombies that want your shit. And on your own, you're not going to hold out forever. You have to sleep sometime, you have to eat sometime. So you need a group of people. And here's the very interesting thing. I have met, since I've been here, a bunch of people that on the outside you would think, oh, well, he's just a normal guy, whatever. But then you have a conversation with them or whatever, and you realize, no, this guy, if they were going to go house to house in the role-playing game, to knock down doors and like try and forcibly arrest or inject people or whatever, this guy would fight. He would take out his hunting shotgun, and as long as he's got shells and he doesn't get nailed, he would keep shooting. And there's a surprisingly higher number of people that are willing to do that than you might suspect. At least in Europe, there is quite a few more of them than you would think, especially what Americans would think. But it's a whole other level to go from, hey, if somebody tries to break down my door to do something to me or my kids, I'm going to shoot until I'm dead, to, hey, somebody's breaking down my neighbor's door 5 k's away and I'm going to rush to the rescue, potentially leaving my family here unguarded or less guarded because I'm not there. So that's a whole other level of organization, because it doesn't have to do with friendship. You might have one friend like that, you might have 2 friends like that, you might be really, really lucky and you've surrounded yourself with your friends, you've been planning this for 5 years and whatever, you all bought property next to each other and you're like blood brothers from when you were 5. Okay, that's 5 guys. It takes something else to build a community where you're going to have 50 men show up with guns to protect you and help you when you're in the deep doo-doo. That doesn't happen overnight, and generally speaking, it doesn't happen unless you have a very strong communal bond. And I believe that strong communal bond can really only be, in our current times, your religion, but that religion has to be true for this bond to actually work. And this is why I keep saying, a bunch of Protestants like creating, zombie survival ranch, they're going to have a much lower morale. They're going to fail their morale rolls when the zombie hordes come a lot more than if you got a hardcore set of Catholics. By the same token, it would work a lot better if they were all hardcore, Punjabis, or hardcore Shintoist, Zen, Japanese guys with a samurai ethic. And that's because these religions have got a very deep and ancient foundation. Protestantism is 500 years old at best and is completely fractured. So what is the real bedrock underlying all the fears and doubts and normal vicissitudes of human beings? In the underlying bedrock, if you like, of Protestantism is secularism. And secularism, it's every man for himself. It's not that different from, hedonism, ultimately. While the bedrock of something like Zen Shintoism can be like family honor, and which would be the noble pagan. And noble pagan are very reliable, but in order to be a noble pagan where another noble pagan comes and tries to do for you, generally you have to be of the same tribe, of the same noble pagan belief system. Um, you know, so that's kind of how I see it. Now, um, those are the things that you absolutely need in the zombie apocalypse, is to be in a group of people that are willing to literally go to war with the rest of the world for each other. That's not easily done. That's quite a difficult thing to put together. So, that's it's something that, if you get a handful of guys that are like that, that's a huge achievement. And, believe it or not, in my little hacienda, again, we're just talking about role-playing games, my little hacienda, I definitely have got people like that. And the funny thing is that I'm now reaching out to broader, shall we say, areas still in the same community, and I'm discovering that, hey, there are potentially quite a lot more people here than that would fit that. So it's quite an interesting setup. Regarding the Russia-Ukraine situation, if it does turn into a hot war, I don't think it will. And if it does, it'll be kind of a fake hot war, which is not to say that some tac nukes might not go off somewhere, but it doesn't keep me up nights at all. I'm in a pretty strategically unimportant position, so, and this, I'm saying this despite the fact that Italy is one of the countries that has supplied the most material against Russia, which, there was a report that at Pisa airport, the supposed humanitarian flights going out to Ukraine were actually filled with guns and ammo, and the not dock workers, whatever they're called, the airplane workers that load the planes up, realized this, and they all put their hands down. They just refused to load them up. They said, no, we're not doing this shit. We're supposed to be sending humanitarian aid, and you're like sending weapons. Fuck that. So that's kind of that, but there's been like 27 or 28 flights of military stuff going to Ukraine. So potentially Russia could have, be quite pissed off at Italy. I think they understand it's the government, not the people. A lot of the people are brainwashed, but the average Italian that's brainwashed is not brainwashed into going to war with Russia. They're brainwashed into like, oh, help the children, whoever they are, whether they're Somalis or Australians that have been misplaced by the war in Russia. It reminds me of a joke, not a joke, it's actually a thing that happened. This guy was telling a story that he used to work on a campus in America, and he was like working like a coffee shop. It was like, I don't think it was a Starbucks, it was on campus. But the guy who like ran the coffee shop worked with him. So it was like the guy who owned the coffee shop and this guy who was like his right-hand man, and it was just the two of them. And he says, they used to get these ditzy fucking blondes coming in there going, oh, I want this Crappuccino, I want this, that, the other. And it's like his boss was eventually, would get sick of this stuff. And these two girls came in, and I can't remember what they did that like upset his boss. But she was like, oh, but can I have a cappuccino, but like, with the skimmed milk and, the frappe? Well, you can have the full fat milk, but we're out of skimmed milk. He goes, but I want the skim milk. And his boss just kind of lost it and goes like, but you can't have the skim milk. Don't you know there's no skim milk anywhere? But why? Because of the war in Alaska. And she's like, oh, okay then, I guess I'll just have a regular milk one. And it's like, what? How does an American college girl or university, whatever it was, not know, like, her own country? There's no war in Alaska. What the hell are you talking? What does skim milk have to do with a war in Alaska? But that's where we are, That's where we're at all over the world. And I do blame America. They've exported this level of awareness. Let's just catch up with the chat here. I think it's mostly Woolly Ramble. Let me see. I work in a shop. We were told to expect 5 to 10% price hike on all grain products. Well, there you go. Yeah, bread apparently is going to go through the roof as well. And the thing is, they're buying up food from farmers, and they're giving farmers huge incentives. My wife was showing me they're paying like farmers 100, 200 grand to just like not produce anything. It's like, what? From flour to snacks to animal feed, price hike is expected from May onwards. Yeah. Woody Ram, thank you very much. You ordered the role-playing game last week. Hello, Slanty Chauffeur Bear. Unicorn Cupcake says, it would be funny if Kurgan was a black man. That would be hilarious. I would have a lot more privilege. Michael P goes, Hail Kurgan. Woolly Ram, would you agree that only religions that place reason and or discipline over emotion will have any effect on survival? Yes, and that's what I'm saying. Not necessarily all of them that are reason and discipline, yes, but there can be just faith, almost of the blind zealot variety, but it can work. For example, I'm not aware that Sikhs are particularly that their religion is particularly based on reason, but they are, firm believers. Or if you take Muslims, like pretty hardcore Muslims, there's certainly no reason there. Even in their religion, it says Allah can do whatever. So Allah doesn't need logical reason, but they're pretty convinced. Now, of course, if your religion is not something you stick to, and we know that Protestants certainly don't, because as we all know, their big fat leader, the German Martin, said that reason is the whore of the devil. And whether you like it or not, all Protestants stem from there, and all Protestants have pretty much taken that on. You could have just sort of blind faith, but again, you have to see what's the bedrock that it sits on. If you take the blind faith of the Sikh, it's pretty strong. If you take the blind faith of the convinced Muslim, again, very strong. If you take the blind faith of the average Protestant, it'll crumble as soon as some difficulty comes up. And he'll find a way to justify it biblically, of course, because sola scriptura, but he'll find a way around it. While, if you take whatever Shintoist Zen monk, their foundation is based on an inner. Well, if you're not familiar with Zen Shintoism or Buddhism or something like that, it's difficult to explain why that bedrock is sound, but it is. And especially in sort of military context, it creates very resilient fighters, because there is almost a level of auto self-sacrifice to the point of even self-destruction if required. And we've seen this in the Vietnam War. There used to be plenty of semi-suicidal Vietnamese that would just go in and take out as many people as they could before they got cut down. So I would say that yes, religion and discipline for sure, and yes, reason, but not necessarily always reason. It's something. There is a deep element of, whether you call it indoctrination, whether you call it reality. The fact is that even if you think that Islam is satanic, it's still based on, well, Satan. If that's what you're thought, there's something there. If you look at the Buddhist Zen Shintoism, it's based on an inner principle of my philosophy or my ideology is superior to human life. And again, if you're Catholic, you will have a similar thing that well, if I die, I die. It doesn't matter as long as I live properly and follow the correct way. Unicorn Cupcake goes, was the Kurgan ever in the military? No, I studiously avoided the military. Not an idiot. Michael P. I saw an interesting video on Academic Agent's channel estimating the number of dissidents in the West. I would say that action-taking people would be about 5%. If it was 5%, would be about 5% of his estimation. Okay. The video is called How Many Dissidents Are There in the West? Very few. I have been told by a guy I met here that we're looking at something like 10%. And I think his number was even higher than that. And I was like, well, if it's half of that, that's still 5%. If it is 5%, that's huge. 5% is enough. But I doubt it's 5% of action-taking dissidents. I think it's a lot smaller than that. Woolly Ram, rural internet acting up. Yeah, I saw that. It was a bit of delay, but it seems okay now, so you might have a bit of lag. Coffee with skim milk is an abomination. I agree, Woolly Ram. I mean, I was just on principle on the side of the guy that told her that she can't have skim milk because of the war in Alaska. I think the number of dissidents is low because almost everyone associated with in the RPG are really on our side. I don't get that. Well, of course, in the RPG game, you know, your group of people should be on your side. Those are the people that you chose to adventure with. I don't know. I mean, I'm being somewhat pleasantly surprised, but people are fragmented. People are fragmented, and you know, in the zombie apocalypse, that's how it starts out. People are fragmented. They don't know each other. They don't really know that there's anybody else that thinks like them. So everybody's like looking at things in their own complete sort of little bubble instead of like getting all together. And if you look at historical events of, you know, bad times, people organized. They organized, they got together, and that's how you create a functional defense of the realm, whatever that realm is, whether it's, you know, your house or whether it's a whole nation. LS16 says zombies and starvations don't care about your fields. Prots get -12 handicapped on saving rolls. Yeah, they do. Unicorn Cupcake, what makes a person gay? What would be the minimum gay act to be considered gay? Then he says, grow your own food. Unicorn Cupcake, we're not talking about your predilections here, so chill, you know. I know you're one of the Gamma Hive people, but like, don't push it. I don't really want to ban you, but you know, I will without hesitation. Michael says, sorry, I miswrote. I think that the number of people on our side are much larger than official stats would have us think. I'm not looking at official stats. Oh, pardon me. I'm not looking at official stats. I'm going by my estimation on people that I meet. Admittedly, you know, I haven't met as many people as I probably would or should because, again, I'm always busy and whatever. But when I go out there, you know, in Europe, there's definitely been a softening of human beings to the point where they're like, oh, I will never be able to kill my own rabbit for food. It's like, dude, if that's where you're at, when the zombie horde comes, you're food. You know, you're basically walking food. So there's a lot of those people. And, you know, the odd guy who's still got that fire in him isn't necessarily prepared, because he might have that fire in him, but he's like, he hasn't like stocked up on guns, ammo, and like, you know, food for, maybe food because he's thinking, oh, there's going to be probably some supermarket shortages. But he doesn't realize, you know, how quickly it goes from like, hey, there's no sugar left in the supermarket to, well, I'm just going to kill my neighbor and take his sugar, you know, and it goes there pretty quick. Okay. Unicorn Cupcake is still going on about looking for confirmation of what's gay. I mean, dude, you know, you can't unsuck a dick, you know. If you've done that, you're gay, all right? It just, CF Neil says, how about a rat? I trapped one kinda, but couldn't finish him off. Yeah, exactly. You know, that's sad shit. I mean, to a certain extent, it happened. Like, this was quite a few months ago. I saw a little mouse like run under this like piece of board that I had out in the, not really the porch, but a part of the house that acts like a bit of a porch. And I quickly stomped on it, and you know, the little mouse was like fucking, his brain was like kind of crushed, and he was like mostly dead with an eye popping out. So I just chiseled him in the middle of the head to like finish him off. And my wife was like, "Ew, but that's horrible. You're just a tiny mouse." And I'm like, "This is a small mouse, yes. They're tiny rats, and they breed worse than rabbits. You don't want these fucking things in your house, do you? Because I don't." And she was like, "Oh, but the poor creature. You know, I get it. You know, it's a creature. I agree. You know, I would much rather it was Mario Draghi under that board. But hey, you know, you do what you can with the pests." So it's, you know, the thing is, even the people around, just remember what happened with the serum shots. You know, we're always talking over here, serum shots. So with the serum shots, you know, the whole point of the game is that people that you absolutely thought you could rely on, they took the full serum shots. And it's going to be the same when it comes to, like, you know, pulling triggers. They're going to roll those morale dice, and that's when you get to find out that to fail the morale roll, they just have to roll a 3 or higher on 2d6. Sad shit. Because only a few of us have got, you know, that you got to roll a 12 twice to fail your morale kind of thing. Look, Unicorn Cupcake, you've been warned twice now. Enough. Mention anything more about gay stuff, you're getting banned for good. So watch it. There is a gap between refusing something to acting against it. If we have to put a number on it, 20% of those who refuse the not vax might take action. Oh. Well, let's see how that works out. 20% would be... Yeah. That's not a bad number. That's still pretty optimistic. That's like 2%. But you got to keep in mind, you know, of those people, I don't know what the percentage of men and women is, but I would assume it's probably close to about the same. And if you consider women as essentially mostly non-combatants, then you're looking at 1%, which, you know, exactly right. Michael P. says you don't need morale if you have faith. Faith is like having, you have to, you know, a 12, morale of 12. You can't fail unless there's some weird minus modifier. That's why I was saying right at the beginning, your community is going to have that level of brotherhood. That level of brotherhood can be forged in fire, you know, in actual war. If you're in a trench warfare with somebody and you go through that together just because you're both there and you've got no options, then yeah, it can be forged. But to have that off the bat, the only way you're going to get that is faith. CF Neil says, I am very sure what I'm willing to die for, but I'm still figuring out what it is I'm willing to kill for. Holy Ghost will counsel me when push comes to shove. I'm armed. Well, that's a question only you can answer. For me, it's real easy. The things I'm willing to die for are pretty much the same things I'm willing to kill for, you know? It's not difficult. Yeah, Band of Brothers, a very good series. I can't remember if I bought the second one, but I haven't watched it yet. I know there was 2 series. Band of Brothers, excellent, very good. And then they interviewed the guys that were actually in that squad or whatever. And look, there's so much nonsense has come out that who knows if it's true or if it's all fake. But either way, it's a good series. It's a good. I've got the DVDs of that actually. That your question about knowing what you're willing to die for. I had a time in my life when, and I've never been a black pill guy. I've never been nihilistic or anything like that. But I grew up with a very much a noble savage type of upbringing, and it was very clear to me from a very early age what I was willing to die for or kill for. What took me a little bit longer was, when I was single and didn't really, care about uh, getting in a serious relationship that would. I mean, I always cared about it, but there was just periods of my life where it was like, well, that's not going to happen now. I don't, I'm not looking for that. Where it was, I had to ask myself sometimes, what am I willing to live for? What am I willing to, and I don't mean that like in a negative, dark way. I just mean like, what are you actually willing, I've always been willing to fight, to have a confrontation, an argument, whatever. But what am I actually willing to like not do that stuff for? To just be like, fuck it, I'm just gonna walk away from this one because I got better shit to do. And that took a while, but of course, family, kids, stuff like that. Those are all the things you're willing to live for, which is a lot easier to see once you have children and so on. But it's a good question to ask yourself. When you're not married yet, don't have kids yet, and you should find a good answer. And then chase it. Well, that's about it. 42 minutes or so. 20 of you. If you've got any questions, I know there might be a little bit of a lag, so I'll wait a couple of minutes. But I hope I've covered, the current affairs and the zombie apocalypse sort of in role-playing game terms, of course. Things you'd miss most in the coming zombie apocalypse. The ability to have really good tequila would, that would be gone. That would disturb me quite a bit. Probably also the ability to have really good chocolate, because I don't think I could make my own. So chocolate and tequila. Those are probably the two things that would be the most. Hello, Sylvester. Sylvester says, caught one live. Finished the RPG book setting. It was hilarious, just as funny as Missionaries. But all my friends hate me now because of Ukraine. On to new friends. Well, I'm sorry you lost a few friends, but just get them to come around and play the game with you. Give them a little adventure to enjoy. If you enjoyed it and you can, just give me a review, because the reviews are always good to have. Michael says, my thinking is what you're willing to live for and kill for are the same thing. The difference is what is necessary. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely the same. Yeah. What you're willing to die, live, and kill for is all the same stuff, really. Nothing much has changed from when I was a kid to now in that respect. Maybe you get a little bit more practical, a little bit more cynical, and a little bit meaner as you get older, but that's pretty kind of cool. Oh, cool. Thank you, Sylvester. I appreciate it. So, yeah. Well, if those of you that have actually bought the book and read it and whatever, let me know if you played the game, all right? Feel free to send me an email about your little first adventure with it. And I'm glad you thought it was funny. I tried to make it interesting to read, so I thought it was funny, but you can't always please everybody. So far, everybody that's read it has told me it is hilarious, so it's pretty good. Wally says, from everything you see happening in the Slavic theater, what odds do you give for it being part of the Luciferian plan versus it being an anomaly? I don't know. I saw some disturbing stuff about Uncle Vlad. Oh, two things remind me. So there's this little video clip of Putin like going up to this little boy, kneels down, talks to the little boy, and then like lifts his t-shirt, gives him a quick kiss on the stomach, and then gets up and walks off as if nothing's happened. That was fucking odd. And I've seen pictures, which I don't know if they're real or not, whatever, of again Vladimir Putin walking in full-on, full wizard regalia of the, what do you call it, of the Freemasons. Um, I'm not really, and oh, and I've read also that apparently Putin was filmed having a pedophile act, with, with like raping some little boy or something, and that he used that same room to film some other Russian politician, which he then blackmailed and whatever, and at the time told him like, oh, I was filming myself there, without saying it was a pedophile sort of incident. And supposedly there's like rumors of this having happened, but who knows? There's so much misinformation. It's hard to tell. I don't, I know that Putin went through the World Economic Forum thing, so there is that link, but I don't know that Putin isn't doing the double agent thing. Putin is a very smart guy. Whether he is, a pedophile or not or whatever, I have no way of knowing that. From an instinctive sensation of the guy, doesn't really strike me as the type. And I'll tell you why. There was, and maybe this was all set up, maybe this was all done on purpose, but some years ago there was one of these, I think it was one of these feminine protesters or whatever. Anyway, this young girl ran up to him on the stage with like her tits out, and he just like looked and just like, hey, gave the thumbs up when he saw this like chick running at him with like her tits out. And I thought, well, it's it seemed like an instinctive reaction. Yes, of course, it could have all been staged, but that's not the reaction that a pedophile would generally have. It's a reaction of a man that's like, yeah, I like pussy, and I mean, Putin doesn't strike me as a guy who's short on self-confidence. He doesn't strike me as some kind of pedo. I don't know what that video was. Again, maybe it's a deep fake somebody's mentioning here. Oh, sounds like a deep fake, this info. I don't know. I can't tell. My sensation of it is that, keep in mind that Putin was like head of the KGB, and he did work his way up to where he is now by using very clever double-dealing tactics. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if he'd been through the World Economic Forum and then turned the cards on them. There are some people saying, oh, he's just playing the other side of the same coin because he's very close to the Jewish community in Russia, and the other Jews, the liberal Jews in Israel, are pushing, the Ukraine side of stuff. I don't know. There are some little bits of info coming out, like Schiff had like 240 something emails between him and Epstein. But again, until all these guilty people of pedophilia are swinging from trees, it's all just words and nonsense and noise. Everything that Russia is doing at the moment seems to me to be like legit, as in they're saying, screw the rest of you, we don't need you, we got everything we need, and we're going to stay Russia. We're not going to become part of the global homo new world order, whatever. That seems to me like what they're doing, but who knows what's really going on. And one other thing you've got to keep in mind that's very, very important. How far are you from the border with Russia or Ukraine? I'm a lot closer than most of you guys, and I couldn't give a crap. Until I have a Russian tank rolling down my driveway, or Ukrainian so-called refugees from the Azanov battalion trying to like blood eagle me or something, I don't give a shit. How does it affect me or my life? You gotta redimension everything. If, again, we're talking about a zombie apocalypse, and a zombie apocalypse is happening, who cares whether Australia becomes a radioactive nuclear crater? Are you in Australia? If you're in Australia, I guess you should care. Hi, James. Then you'd care. But if you're not, it doesn't matter to you. It doesn't affect you. It's just noise on your screen, sort of thing. So, okay, so let's just catch up a bit here. Michael P says the Ukraine-Russia psyops is really strange for me. People I know, vax and vax, get all pissy when I call out bullshit on the Ukraine side, even though they all well know I'm a Yuki and a nationalist, very much pro-Ukraine. Interesting. The thing is, to be one of the people that is not fooled by bullshit, it does put you at odds with the rest of the world, because you've got to keep in mind that more and more it's becoming so blatantly obvious that the Catholic religion is correct. We are under the dominion of the Prince of Lies. And once you start to realize that, you realize that it literally is a world of lies. The empire of lies is everywhere, So it becomes hard. Yeah, Woolly Ram says he doesn't have pedo face. I think that too. But unless that little video of him kissing the boy's stomach is a complete deep fake, but apparently he's acknowledged it and said, oh, it meant nothing. I just wanted to, kiss his belly like a cat. That to me did look like some kind of weird ritualistic message type thing. Who knows? I don't know what that was. Michael says, this is showing us who can make up their minds and who want their opinions told. Could be an IQ thing though. Not necessarily an IQ thing. In fact, I've shown that people of the midwit level, the 120 to 130 range people, those are the people that are most susceptible actually to propaganda. I think it's an Asperger's thing. If you're a little bit autistic, you don't give a crap about the human element. You're just looking at the facts. You're looking at the logic. You're looking at parts that fit and make sense. So your ability to do logic, which is not necessarily always tied to IQ, is, I think, important. Indeed, Woolly Ram, time will tell. And Michael P says, people should be willing to call out bullshit on their side. I know. Dude, you're telling me, I live in Italy and I was born, Venetian, of course, but people call me Italian, and I'm like, I can't stand the damn wops. Posing cowardly fuckers, a lot of them. Yeah, you gotta. Sylvester says, I feel the same about Putin. Only politician that I can listen, but I never know with people in power. Yeah, the other thing about Putin is he doesn't talk to people like they're completely retarded and talking down to them and telling them platitudes. He actually explains to you what he's doing and why he's doing it and the reasons. It seems to me pretty, legit. Like I've been saying, Russia is having propaganda that is very hard to beat in the long term, because they're basically using facts, dialectic as their propaganda, which is, it's harder for the normies to digest it initially, but ultimately it bears out. So Sylvester says, for the first time I really understood that IQ doesn't matter. I have multiple friends with IQs higher than mine and their judgment is squat. Yeah, just because a guy's got a high IQ doesn't mean he's right about everything or even anything. It's like a computer. It's like you're saying, oh, well, he's got the latest, quadruple 500 megahertz chip, Intel chip in his, and he's got 5 of them in his computer. Yeah, but guess what? If the programs that he runs there are written by like some guy in India that's like missing code, or if he uses his computer to write a novel and his grammar is shit and his spelling is bad and he doesn't know how to use autocorrect, and even when he does it mangles up the whole meaning of the sentence, he's not going to produce the great novel. So he's got a really fast computer. The other guy using a ZX Spectrum that can do a little program in BASIC, he can kick his ass because he can actually write or program. So ditto for education. Yeah, education has always been a complete scam. I mean, think about it. What is an education? If you want to learn something about history, and you buy 20 history books and you read 20 history books, you've pretty much done more than you will do throughout your entire high school, primary and high school put together. You'll have read more history than anyone that's gone through that. And I mean, 20 history books, how long will that take you? Let's say 20 weeks, half a year. So in half a year, you'll have covered more than the entire curriculum from when you're like 5 or 6 to, when you're almost 20. So like 10 years of stuff, you'll have done it in half a year for one topic. And you'll have done it more. You'll have probably done it to like degree level, if not more. That's all that education is. Just, you can find that stuff at the library for free. Well, you probably have to step over the bodies of a few transvestites reading stuff to kids or whatever, but, Michael says, I don't have any autism and it's quite difficult for me to walk against the crowd. It's not my natural disposition to be contrary to the group. Any advice? I do have a high IQ though, between 130 and 145, depending on the day. Well, having a high IQ helps if you're, again, it may be that you've had a good education in terms of understanding maths, logic, and reason. If you can do logic, and if the other thing is if you're interested in the truth, ultimately there's only 2 types of people. People who love the truth, regardless of what it is, and people who don't. So if you're one of the guys that loves the truth, then it's easier. That's what it is. Wooly Ram says, speaking of computers, this year is probably the last time to get a non-5G phone tablet. Oh yeah, well, my phone is like 7 years old or something, so. Oh, Alicia, hello. Yeah, if you can find a library, yeah, true. In retrospect, school damaged my capacity for math and history. Wooly Ram. Well, that might mean you might make a good mathematician and a historian, because funnily enough, the guy that I was talking to that knew about the same sort of stuff I've known about for like 20 years, he also dropped out of history, and so did I. So, school damages you because the stuff that you really learn well at school, you stop looking at properly. And so when you leave school, you never look at it. The stuff you've never looked at in school, there you got a chance to actually find out what the real story is. So, and Sylvester says, same for me, Woody, recovering right now. Libraries are online, and most, if not all, books worth reading are free. Yeah. Michael says, reading about classical mythology right now. It's baffling why it's not taught in modern curriculum here. It used to be taught in schools. They've taken it out for a reason. Especially Greek and Roman mythology is awesome. You should know that. It's very important. Oh, Alicia, don't worry about it, about locating the Browning. You're not a fail. It's fine. I wouldn't. I've been looking at something else. A 765. I forget the name. But it's super expensive. It's like $3.5 grand secondhand, and you can't find them really. A very limited amount of them made. It's I forgot the name. It's a very interesting gun. Anyway, guys, I've been going on an hour, and I wanted to just do a quick one because I've had a very long day. I'm tired. But thank you all for being here. And always, feel free to, like I said, if you've bought the role-playing game book, if you got this and you played it, let me know when you played it. Yeah, that's the thing. Send me a little adventure report. I enjoy reading those. So Michael says he agrees about the school damage thing. It made me dislike learning and reading. I'm now recovering. I used to be good at math, but one bad teacher messes you up. Yeah, it's true. Egyptian mythology is crucial for understanding modern occultists. Yes, it is. I would add one more thing, that yes, one bad teacher can mess you up if you're not trained to understand, which is what I'm telling my daughter. I tell her, look, when she first got here, I told her, look, the most important thing in life, do you know what it is? She goes, what? Well, first of all, I'm your dad, so you can always tell me anything. Never be ashamed of anything. That's rule number 1. But then the other rule, which is equally as important, do you know what that is? Like, what? always have toilet paper. And she burst out laughing. Do you know why? Why, Dad? Because the world is full of shit, and you're going to meet a lot of it. And you got to have toilet paper. And the other thing is, you got to learn to navigate. Because the world's full of shit, and there's oceans of it, and you got to learn to sail those brown waves. So, when something happens, like one of the teachers gets her upset, or, she doesn't like a subject, I'm like, daughter, this is where you learn to sail the wave of shit. Just learn to find your way. You got a bad teacher, a subject that you used to like, or maybe you don't like because you got a bad teacher. It's an opportunity to train yourself to like that topic despite the teacher. Find a way. That's the way I would say it. If you got kids, I strongly suggest you teach them that. Anyway, thank you all for the good night wishes, and good night to you all. God bless you and keep you. And remember, zombies. There's plenty of them out there. Make sure you aim for the head. Good night.